Oh shit. Welcome to episode 4 of Live from the Tracking Room. I'm your host, David Chasteen. Here we are right in the midst of Sober October, beginning of the month. For those of you that don't know, don't follow me on my social media, this month I'm doing Sober October. That's no alcohol, no weed. I'm going to the gym 20 times. I'm doing 10 hot yogas. I'm going to run 100 miles. No bread this month, no sugar, no sodas, obviously no fast food. So a lot of clean living, working out. I'm going all in, baby. I'm also doing 5 podcasts, and I'm doing 10 to 15 stand-up sets, no less than 10. So coming in hot, that's the goals this month. That's Sober October for your ass. First of all, I got to pick right back up something I backlogged those first 3 episodes just so everybody knows. I did them all 3, and then I kind of slow burned released them up top. But I want to get right into something I talked about pretty early in episode 1. This Kavanaugh, boy. Kavanaugh. Man, I had no idea that was going to be such a big fucking deal. I remember I woke up that day, and I went on YouTube, and there was just a live stream, a C-SPAN, and I clicked on it. It had not been in the news at all. I think it was the first day that nobody had even heard of him yet. Nobody had talked about him. And then of course, that's why you never speak on the politics till the facts come out, boy. I don't normally like speaking about politics, so I think from now on we're going to keep it light. You don't know what the future holds with these podcast things, and this is a living record of what you said. So I hereby reserve all judgment. I do have some opinions on it, but that shit ain't gonna change nothing, so I don't care. So just disregard all that stuff I said in episode 1. Don't, and if you didn't listen, don't go back and listen to it, because it's not, doesn't matter what else I talk about. And let's just recap some previous episode stuff. I think I talked about Rob Schneider somewhere in there. Rob Schneider came through Nashville. Good stand-up, dude. I was talking about I didn't know how it was going to be. It actually ended up turning out being really good. The funny thing I'm learning about comedy these days is when somebody's got a huge name, a big famous name, and they come into town and they have a bunch of shows, you really don't know what you're going to get unless you know what you're going to get. That's what I'm getting at, right? Is there's comedians, and they're well established, and you know their work, and you know they're going to be killers. And then there's comedians that you know their name and comedic acting, and maybe they did sketch like SNL or something like that, so you don't exactly know what they're going to do. But Rob Schneider, I had my doubts, boy, but he came in and he threw down, man. He's actually really good. He was a really nice guy. I got to talk to him a little bit. And The Hot Chick, that was the movie. Thanks, shout out my friend Sadie Hart. I didn't remember the name of the movie, but the movie that he was in, Hot Chick. Also, The Animal, I think, was that movie he was in. That's how he gets all that flack for making fun of shit where he's like a stapler or a carrot or something like that in the South Park episodes. But Rob Schneider, cool dude. He brought a feature act with him. Dude's name was Monty Franklin. From Australia, and that dude was super funny, really good. So check him out, Monty Franklin. If you don't know, go look him up on social media. Let's see, what else, man? What else did I talk about? Oh yeah, this is some more Sober October, huh? It's a big month for me, man. I'm trying to be productive. I'm trying to get out there. We're starting it with the podcast. We're going with the working out. I'm trying to get into the stand-up. We're out here being busy, out here being productive this month. So if you're hearing this, you're listening to this, you're looking for a little inspiration, you try to get into it, man, just follow along on my social media and listen to the podcasts. I'm out here busting my ass, man. Tonight, I'm running 100 miles this month, and it's October 3rd, I guess, going into the 4th. It's late night, early morning right now, October 4th. So I have yet to do October 4th things. I just got done with the 3rd. But in the last 3 days, I wanted to be at 18 miles by now, but I'm at 13 and a half. So I'm trying to get my diet in shape. I'm changing the way I'm eating, so my body is acting crazy. Like I'm cutting out all the sugar in my diet. So normally I didn't realize I eat candy every day. I didn't notice that until I went, my body, I just muscle memory go to a jar of candy every day and eat candy when I get to work every day. So no candy. I'm not drinking any sodas. I was drinking, I got in a bad habit of getting those 44-ounce big gulp Dr. Peppers. I'd get them real late at night too. And if you don't know about this, you actually have something in your gut, in your stomach, called your gut biome. It's like your gut bacteria. And they actually call it your second brain. If you don't know about this, is actually bacteria in your body, in your gut, that controls your cravings and kind of like fucks with your mind a little bit. So whatever your diet, like whatever you stimulate your body with that diet, your gut bacteria becomes used to that. And your body, when you start to disrupt that and change your diet, your body kind of starts to send you all these mixed signals. Like I feel like I'm hungry all day long. Like I eat and I'm eating well and I'm eating good, healthy meals, but I feel like I'm starving all day, which is not a great way to feel. But you got to make the change, and I'm just trying to see what it's like. A lot of people don't do sodas, they don't do sugar. I mean, I'm definitely gonna go back to drinking. I can't wait to drink a Sprite, dude. Oh my god. I've been drinking a lot of, before this month, I was drinking Sprite with grenadine in it. It's like a cool looking red drink, dude, but it tastes so good, and I want it. Talking about it right now, dude, I'm about to hop in the car, go to the gas station, and get one of them big gulps, dude. I'm not going to do it, but god damn, I want it so bad. But yeah, the sugar thing is freaking my body out, so I'm getting used to that. Let's see what else, man. But yeah, the gut biome, I don't know, take that or leave it, whatever. But look into it, man. It's really interesting that your body, like your mind there's bacteria in your stomach that is affecting your mind, like living bacteria in your body that's making you think, like what you want and making your body, like it's making you react in a certain way. You have these impulses to do certain things just based on this bacteria. So that's fighting that battle in nature, fighting some biology over here. But yeah, the other things, the alcohol thing, I'm not a huge drinker, so that's not so much. It's really the weed thing. I'm cutting out the weed this month. If that makes you uncomfortable, whatever. We're talking about some weeds, but yeah, man, I think it's just time. It's time to see what life is like when you take that out. I know I talked about that a lot on the last episode. I'm making a conscious decision. I'm being active. I'm not doing it, just to see. I just want to prove to myself I got control. That's really what that's about. It's not. I don't think it's unhealthy for me, except for in my behaviors and in my actions, So I'm removing a variable, and we're going to see where it goes. I give it 30 days, and then, I'm not going to quit forever. But I just, definitely for this month, I want to prove to myself that I can do it. So what else, man? I've been crazy productive in these 3 days, though. It's crazy. I talked about, I looked for that little break up in the day of smoking weed on the last episode. So when I don't have that, I'm experiencing a little stress, a little emotion, but what that is it's making me work. So I'm being super productive. I went and I did 5 minutes of stand-up last night, and I've released episode 3 of the podcast. I knocked out my podcast logo. Shout out Logan Shade, my homie back from high school. His mom taught the math lab in high school, bruh, so he's a real homie from day one. Shout out Logan Shade. Follow him on, look him up on social media. His personal social media is at Morris Payne, Payne, Morris Payne, or his podcast, actually. He's got a podcast coming out called Cutie and the Podfish. It's pretty much a streaming guide. So it's pretty much like they're going to go Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, stuff like that, and they're going to review different things, maybe different subjects at times, maybe specific episodes, specific movies, and it's going to be kind of like a guide to streaming services, which I think is a pretty cool podcast idea. That's something that can be pretty universal for people nowadays, something they could get into. So if you're interested in that, man, or if you're not, just go check it out anyway, because dude, he helped me out, so I'm shouting him out. Thanks again, Logan, man. I appreciate you. But the logo, yeah, man, I'm really happy to have that instead of writing my stupid, shitty Sharpie logo down every time and sharing that. So I'm glad to have a real official looking logo. So thanks for that, man. I changed 2 tires on my car by myself the other day, which is like, I don't know if I talked about it on the podcast, but I caught a flat tire, and The crazy thing about getting a flat tire at home, and you don't have a jack to change your tire, that put the what do they call it? The donut on. That little donut bike tire they give you. When you don't have the jack and your car is flat at home, you can't take it anywhere to get it patched, you know? So you're pretty much paying for this fucking $10,000 hunk of metal that you can't do anything with. So I finally got somebody to let me borrow a jack because my stupid car didn't come with one. Actually, that's not true. I keep saying that, but what I'm too stupid to do was to get the donut out of the car and look under the donut because there was totally a jack in there. I don't know why I was going to try to front like I didn't. Somebody let me borrow a jack, and I was kind of worried about. I gave my heart to. I really was trying to get this jack from them, and as soon as I tried to do that, I had one the whole time. So I pretty much sat on that for 2 weeks for no reason. But something you might not know, which I figured out, is you can't put the donut on the front. You shouldn't put the donut on the front because the weight of the engine can blow that shit out while you drive, and so it's unsafe to put the donut on the front. That's just a public service announcement. That's not like some comedy or anything. But so what I had to do, I had a flat on my front. I had to put the donut on the back and then take the good tire from the back and put it on the front, which I know is crazy interesting. But for me, I felt like a man doing it, you know? I got my hands dirty. I also did it with no shirt on and got destroyed by mosquitoes. I looked down and there were just like little baby mosquitoes all over my body. So that was fun to deal with. But I felt like a man. I felt good. So I'm out here being productive, man. What are you doing this month? What are you doing in October? A lot of people talk, why you pick October? I mean, of course it's the Joe Rogan thing, right? They came up with this and that's why I'm doing it. Not just because of them. Not because of them at all. I didn't participate last year. I want to participate this year just to see what I can do. I want to push myself, and I just need an excuse, you know? So this is a perfect excuse for me. Change my diet, get productive and stand up and podcasting and just health and working out, all that. So I'm pretty much using that as the excuse, which is a good thing. Normally excuses are negative, and this should be a good deal for me. I already feel, I'm not going to lie, I'm sitting here feeling horrible. Ran 13.5 miles in 3 days, and I'm changing my whole diet and going through the stomach thing. I don't know if this is a thing, but I'm getting like cold sweats through the day. People say you can't get addicted to weed and you can't have withdrawals. And I actually feel pretty good mentally about it. I'm not like sweating I'm just having to be way productive all the time. I'm not sitting around like ever. If I'm not asleep, I'm up doing something all day long right now. So, but my body, I was at work today and my body I was get cold sweat and then I'd get hot and then cold again, like freezing cold too. So whoever said that there's no withdrawals from weed, they might be a liar. I don't know if they run a test on that or anything, but I don't feel great all the time, but I also feel great all the time. It's this weird feeling. I feel really good about what I'm doing, and I feel great about it, but my body is, I think, still catching up. And I think there's the other part of it is my diet that I'm doing is kind of like a keto type of diet. Like I'm pretty much only eating chicken, broccoli, and rice. And at work they got this like chicken BLT sandwich, and I just do no bun. I get it wrapped in some lettuce. So that's pretty much all I'm eating. My body might just be like pissed at me that it's not getting what it normally gets, but we'll give it at least 2 weeks and we'll see how I feel after that. You got to give dieting some time because your body starts to feel a little fucked up. You got to hang with it and see what happens. So yeah, the diet's coming along. Sober October. I'm also doing the hot yogas, right? I did one at home. I'm not going to count that one. I did it on the 30th too, so it doesn't really count. But I actually found if you're into yoga, if you want to get into yoga, if you're ever curious about yoga, dude, it's one of the most beneficial things you can do for your body. You'll drip sweat. You'll sweat probably like you never sweat in your entire life. Like the first time I did hot yoga at a real studio, I probably sweat 250% more than I've ever sweat at any other time in my life. Like it was ridiculous, the amount of sweat. The one that I go to is East Nashville Hot Yoga, and it's a 90-minute class most of the time. The fucked up thing is that I had to schedule it out so I can get my 10 in, and only some of them are 90 minutes. Like the one I go every Sunday, and the Sunday at 10 a.m. is 90 minutes. But all the ones through the week, they don't really offer a 90-minute that I can make it to because I'm not getting in there at 6 a.m. There's just no way that's happening. I'm just not doing it. So they're only 60 minutes, but I mean, it's better than nothing. So I'm going to do four 90s and then 6 60-minute classes. But the yoga, dude, it's horrible. It's literally the worst thing ever. Like, the first time I did it, I know I just said it's great, but let me preface it with this. It makes you feel worse than you've ever felt probably the first time you do it. I don't want to discourage anybody from doing it. The suffering is a big part of it. But I went in there, and the first class I went to, I was running late. I scheduled beforehand, and I paid beforehand, and I got caught in traffic, and I was going to be late pretty much. And the thing about the class is it's in 105-degree heat in a room, and the humidity is like, I can't remember what the humidity is, like 45%, 50% humidity in a 105-degree room, and they lock the door. So, like, once the class starts, you can't get in, and you can't get out. Like, you'd have to stop the class and get the instructor to unlock the door to let you out of the room. Like, totally. And that is a little intimidating. But also, yoga is meant to, like, kind of stabilize your mind a little bit. So being late, running late, like having to park in East Nashville where I've never been before and then run across the street and get in the studio. I had, like, 2 minutes to spare, and I'm, like, registering as they're starting the class, and I got to change. It was a little hectic. And then I got in there, and The important thing about yoga is you need to go hard. Like, you got to give it 100% every pose. I think you hold every pose for a minute. There's 26 positions, and then you do some savasana in between, which is just like a resting pose. So you hold each pose for a minute, I think, is how long you work on each one. And then you do everything twice in the 90-minute class. Every pose you do 2 times. So I went way hard. Like, I was going hard. And there's a standing section, and there's a section where you do on the ground. And the standing portion of the class is a little bit less than half, but it's all up top. And, well, I mean, maybe it might be about half. But what it does, dude, that you don't expect is it toasted my legs. My legs were dead. I was, like, literally, I never felt leg fatigue like that except for one other time in my life. I did track in high school. I tried to run track my junior year, and I did weightlifting with, like, the A-team track dudes. And that was the first time I ever vomited from working out 100%. The track coach was in there, like, making fun of me and calling me a bitch and shit because I was in the marching band, and he was like, "Oh, you don't get work like this in band. Come on, get up." And I was like, "No, dude, you don't understand. My legs are failing me, and I'm gonna vomit right now." And he was trying to hype me up or whatever, but I just wasn't having it. Coach Lador, if you're out there, sorry, dude, I failed you. And then I quit track immediately after that because I had shit going on, and I could not deal with that all the time. So yeah, I definitely I hobbled my ass. I got up off the ground and hobbled into the bathroom and projectile vomited and collapsed on the floor in that track practice, and I never went back. So shouts out Coach Lador. But the hot yoga, second worst leg fatigue I've ever had for sure. I did the whole standing portion, and what was interesting to me is the yoga instructor, I introduced myself to her before the class, and she remembered my name because as we got into it, she kept looking at me like and saying, "David, you need to, ease back on your heels more. Don't get up on your toes." In this pose, she started, like, criticizing my poses, right? So in my mind, I'm like, she knows I'm a first-time student. She must see me and see I got potential and that I'm doing good, and then she expects more out of me. I'm trying to be positive, right? That's where my mind goes. So I start listening to her, and I start going harder and harder, and really trying to achieve the poses. And before I know it, I'm at that flashback to vomiting in track practice, dude. I feel that same feeling coming back. So in that first class, I think I had to take, like, at least 10 breaks to keep from throwing up in that locked room. The only thing that got me by was that I knew I was in that room. The heat was horrible. The humidity and the sweat wouldn't stop. But I was like, dude, you can't throw up in this room because there's, like, 20 people in here. And if you vomit, they're all going to freak out, and we're all locked in here. And just hot, sweaty vomit. Just like, sorry if you're eating some food or anything right now. But the fear of having to go through that with, like 19 other strangers in the room really just scared. It put the fear of God into me into not vomiting. So normally I don't like to quit, like, when I'm working out and doing stuff. Like, I will puke in with running and different stuff like that because mentally you get better after stuff like that. But in the yoga studio, I don't think that's the place to be vomiting. You know what I'm saying? So I laid out a little bit, and I've gone back to the class probably 3 times since then. And the last time I went, I actually made it through the entire class without taking a break, which was great, because there's always a couple poses that fuck me up, dude. Like, it's really interesting Bikram yoga, like the Hot 26. This dude Bikram, who, if you look into him, he's actually a fucking crazy person, but somehow he developed a system for yoga, and it's just incredible, dude. Like, afterwards, the high you get from like working out and just from doing the yoga and the positions, the flexibility, you just get this, you leave and you did something, you worked hard and you accomplished something. Even if you got to take some breaks or whatever, you leave feeling great. So I remember that last class, I didn't have to take any breaks at all. My flexibility was like insane. That's the other thing, the heat, dude. I'm like a really flexible person. Like, I'm double jointed. I think everybody in my family is double jointed. Like, I don't know if that makes you lucky or what, if you're lucky to be double jointed, but I'm naturally really flexible as like a 6'1" male. Like, normally dudes are like 6'1". I don't think they're very flexible. They're probably pretty stiff dudes, but I'm naturally pretty flexible. So when I get in there, dude, the heat really loosens up all your ligaments and your hamstrings and stuff. So you getting deep. Like, I can put my whole torso and head against my legs, like locked from the standing position, like stretch down and touch my toes, and like put my hands like more than flat on the ground. I'm like bending my elbows, whole torso and head flat against my legs. It's insane how the heat helps your flexibility, But yeah, man, I'm just looking forward to getting back into doing some yoga. It really helps your mind. Another thing about it is not only the physical aspect of it, but you also got to start fighting your mind in there, because the thing I found every time I go in, that it's later and later that my mind starts to turn on me. So at the very beginning, it got like right after a certain number of the standing portions, my mind started being like, dude, you can't do this. Like, you're going to have to fall out. Like, you need to lay down. You're not going to be able to achieve this. And then as time went on, I think I've done 4 official classes, and I've done a couple at home. Your mind just you move the goalpost, right? Like, you just get a little further down the line and you want to quit later and later. And it's the same thing with running. It's the same thing with anything, really, any kind of thing you're doing. So, I mean, that's just the test of time, dude. There's ladies, old ladies, like little girls in there doing that shit. So, I mean, it makes you feel like a little bitch sometimes. But you go in there, you work hard. They give you the one thing I don't like, and this is probably my only negative criticism about it, is there's a little inconsistency between the instructors. And the only inconsistency is some of them, at the end, they will give you these cold rags that are scented with lavender, and it's probably the most relieving feeling I've ever had in my life, where you just bust your ass in this class and you feel horrible. You get your final savasana and you lay down, and you're just like feeling your heart rate and you're feeling your breathing, and then she's talking to you and she tells you to finally close your eyes, because a big point of yoga is you're not supposed to close your eyes. Like, you're supposed to stare straight ahead or see yourself in the mirror and make sure you're executing the poses. But in the final savasana, she tells you to close your eyes, and you just feel so relieved, and you're holding your hands out by your side, and she comes out and just puts this little cold lavender rag in your hand, and you just put it on your face and you start wiping yourself with it. Oh, dude, it feels amazing. But some of those yoga instructors are hardcore motherfuckers, and I didn't know that you don't get the lavender rag every time. So I did 2 classes and I got the lavender rag, and then my 3rd class I had a different instructor, and I get to the end and no rag, dude. She doesn't come around and give out the rag. She's just like, y'all got to man up. You got to be men today, or be adults. I don't want to exclude anybody, but yeah, no rag, dude. And I asked her about it afterwards, and what she said, she kind of dogged the other yoga instructor. She's like, well, I've actually been doing this a lot longer than so and so or so and so, and that blah blah blah. And I was like, fuck you, lady, give me the rag. You know what I'm saying? I came here for one reason. No, that's not. But it feels so good. You get that lavender scent, whatever, that cold rag. I want to go get one right now, dude. I'm gonna just go wash my face a little bit in some cold water. Shit is so relieving. But yeah, hot yoga, if you've never done it, it is the best and worst thing ever. You feel horrible most of the time. But if you're anybody like me, I like to, at least lately, I try to do things where I'm embracing some kind of suffering, because I've kind of come to this feeling that if you don't find a way to suffer and inflict it on yourself, life kind of will find it for you. Like, life will put you through some suffering. Life will make you deal with something to learn. Like, suffering and putting up with stress and hardship, like that's an important part of life. I think it makes you improve. And a lot of people go through a lot of hardship and a lot of stress that they have no control over, and they're kind of out of control of their lives. So it's like financial stress and maybe not being happy or being depressed or something like that. But the alternative is you can take control of your life and accomplish things you want, and then you just inflict that onto yourself to make yourself stronger, you know? So the yoga thing, the hot yoga specifically, is a great tool for doing that. Same with running that I'm trying to do a lot. It's all a really great tool, you know, for doing something. Stress is important to life. If you don't have stress in your life, I don't think you're doing yourself a good service. I think you're doing yourself a disservice, because like I said, it will find you. That stress, that hardship, is going to find you if you don't find it. So it's better to be on top of it and provide it to yourself than wait back and let life take care of it for you, you know? So there's that. I think I was started to talk about how to do some hot yoga at home. Just go to YouTube and look up a hot yoga, 90-minute hot yoga class. It'll probably be the first 2 videos that pop up or by the same channel, and just make sure you get the right one. It's a lady, I think she's wearing like a pink tank top, and she's wearing a headset mic, and she's standing in front of some mirrors. It was a pretty decent video. I'm pretty standard to what I do in the class. Of course, you know, I just turned off the AC in the apartment to kind of get a little hot in the house, but you know, the humidity and the heat, it wasn't the same, but it was, you know, it's better than nothing. So hot yoga, there's that. I'm trying to get into that shit this month. What else, man? Oh, man, some movies, right? I like some, no. Before we talk about some movies, I do want to touch on this. Some of you have listened to the podcast already, and on this episode, I'm sure I'll do it. I'll pick out some songs later, but I'm kind of intro and outro in my podcast right now for the time being until I get my format set up. The music I'm featuring on the podcast is all music that I have either gotten to record myself with a different team of people that have hired me, or it's stuff that somebody else has recorded and I've got the mix. It's not necessarily stuff that has been released yet, or the versions of the mixes that I've done are not the ones that'll be on the records, more than likely, because I know the first 3 episodes, the first song I used, it was a band called Cirrus Bright. The song's called All Night, and I don't think they released it yet, so don't tell them, but I don't know if they will release it. But we worked with them in the studio, and they were great guys. I love the song. I love the track. They were a great band to work with. These 2 dudes, Tyler and Evan, I can't remember their last names, but man, I think they're from Knoxville. Really good music, really different. The one I used was called All Night, but there's this other one I'll probably use called Wandering, which is a great track that actually Evan wrote for Tyler to sing. So Evan wrote it kind of like in the like he tried to take on the perspective of the other bandmate Tyler and wrote it for him to do. So I thought that was really interesting. I really loved those guys, and I love that song. So that was the song in episode 1, All Night by Cirrus Bright. Episode 2, a buddy of mine, Christopher Jed, he's got a project called Okemo. It's Okemo. You can look that up on Spotify. I know he's on there. But the first song was Shiver by Okemo. And then the second, or the third episode, I did a song called Someday by Okemo. And those were tracked at Strange Bird in not in East. That's actually it's really close to my apartment. It's kind of close to Antioch in Nashville. But Strange Bird, they do all their stuff to tape. It's an all-analog recording studio. This guy Travis is out there. He's a great engineer. But Chris is a good buddy of mine, and we went to school together, and we've been working together a little bit. We've been working together for the whole time I've been in Nashville, pretty much. And he always gives me all his tracks, and he lets me do mixes of them. And I did not do the mixes on the album. I think my buddy Alex DeVore actually did all the mixes and mastering for the album, which he did a phenomenal job on. And the Cirrus Bright one, that was just my rough mix from in the studio. So it's not like a mixed thing or release. It's just at the end of the day, I did a little rough mix. So, so that's the deal for right now, I'm going to eventually do video, and I'm going to do guests, and we'll get all that going. But for now, I'm going to get into it by just doing, this is a music and a comedy and all kinds of stuff podcast. So to bring in the music a little bit, to tie that in right now, we'll just do a little intro and outro with some stuff that I've gotten to work on. And I don't know what I'm going to pick yet. You will have heard it by now already. So I'll recap that one on the next one. I'll give them a shout out, and I'll probably start to plan out what I'll do ahead of time so I can shout them out per episode. Or I might edit it in. Who knows? Sometimes if I do a good enough start of a podcast, I won't go back and redo an intro like I did on the first 2 episodes. Like on the 3rd episode, I just got right into it. So maybe if I do these intros, I'll come up with the songs and I'll shout them out per episode so I don't have to backtrack. But so that's the deal now. If you were wondering what the songs are or how you could find them, I know Chris's are released. The other one probably is not released. So look up Okemo. Definitely check them out. They got some solid tracks going on. Let's see, what else, man? Oh, yeah, the movie thing I was going to talk about. I don't know if y'all have seen this new trailer for The Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. I guess it's just like a camera test that they use to be like a little teaser trailer, but they use the song Laughing by the Guess Who, and it's just, if you don't know, the Joker movie is going to be somewhat of an origin story, right? So it's going to be how the Joker, they really have done a great job of not releasing a lot of information about what's going to happen. I know Bryan Callen is in the movie, and he plays a male stripper, and there's a part where he's in a club, and when he comes out of the club, he gets in an argument with a clown on the street. Like, there was video of them shooting the scene outside, like, somewhere. So but you don't know any of the plot. But man, it looks like it's going to be great. I almost said Keanu Reeves. Joaquin Phoenix, dude, is such a great actor. I mean, he was Johnny Cash in Walk the Line. He was in Signs when he was younger. He was in The Village. I think he played a blind guy in The Village. Dude, he's just such a phenomenal actor. He was in Her, which is just pretty much him in a cell phone for a whole movie. The dude is a baller actor, and I'm really looking forward to him playing the Joker. I know that Heath Ledger killed it, and we're all tired of Batman and redoing the same stories, and Ryan Reynolds is 500 superheroes, but I'm really looking forward to this, man. And if you haven't seen the Laughing by the Guess Who trailer, I know I posted it on the LFTTR _ Instagram. It's the first post I made, so if you just scroll to the bottom of my posts, it's on there. But man, it looks great. They really don't give me much to go on right now, but it looks like it's going to be awesome, so I'm totally looking forward to going to the movies and checking that one out. And that song Laughing, I didn't know that song before, and now I've been listening to it like all the time. They use it so perfectly in the trailer. So I wish I had more to say. I wish I had more information about the Joker movie, but I don't. I'm about to go just try to make friends with Bryan Callen to figure out what the fuck is going on with that movie, because he's got to buddy it up with Joaquin Phoenix a little bit. He's got to be on set and see some of the stuff that's going on. He's got to have scripts, and he's privy to the plot. So, I mean, obviously I'm not going to do that. But I would love to know more about it. I can't wait till they release a little more information, release a real trailer and the movie, dude. I'm definitely going to go see that one. Hopefully it is sweet, dude. It looks like it's going to be great. So that's movies. That's my little movie talk for the episode. Let's see what else we got going on. Oh, man, I haven't got to talk about any combat sports on the podcast yet, but, man, we are on the eve of probably the biggest UFC fight in history, Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Conor McGregor, which is going to be a phenomenal fight. I really wasn't sure how it was going to go. I was really nervous. If you watched the first press conference they did in New York, they didn't allow it to be open to the public, right? It was just press. So there was no applause, there was no reaction, it was nothing. It was just the guys on stage with Dana White and talking. And I really I got a little nervous because Conor just was promoting his whiskey the entire time, and he was like drinking whiskey on the stage and like giving whiskey to Dana, and he was acting, it just didn't seem right, it seemed forced. And I think now in hindsight, looking back at it, it's probably he didn't have the crowd to feed off of, and Conor's such a boisterous guy, and he really relies on the mental aspect of the game, like getting in your head and being loud and being obnoxious, being a trash talker. So I think not having the crowd to feed off of just didn't make him look very good, because Khabib is such a calm, he barely fucking speaks English. He's from Dagestan. He's Russian. Russian is obviously his first language. So he barely speaks English. So he's not incredibly articulate. And anyway, Conor's interrupting him like the entire time. So it's hard for him to get any complete thoughts out. But they've done several interviews with Conor since then that I've watched, and man, he looks like vintage Conor McGregor. I'm not gonna lie, I was nervous, man. I thought maybe the money spoiled him, maybe he's worried about making money off that whiskey, maybe he's just not in the game, maybe his head's not in the game. But boy, man, seeing him in some interviews, he's wearing his grandfather's, like, it's like a derby looking hat, and at first I was like, oh, but man, his mindset, you can tell. He's calm and cool and collected. He's in there. He's in there to fight. The thing that I realized is that he doesn't need money. Like if it was about money, he'd be fine. Like, he's got investments and he could do movies. He could do anything and he could be set for life. He's going to be fine forever. Conor McGregor is probably the biggest MMA fighter ever. Like, if you take out Brock Lesnar, because he draws that entire WWE audience and then the MMA audience as well, Conor McGregor is definitely the biggest fighter in mixed martial arts history of any organization. He's huge. Everybody knows him all around the world. Everybody knows who Conor McGregor is. You probably go over to Ethiopia, some dudes running, playing soccer ball with the ball made out of twigs and shit, and they know who Conor McGregor is. They know who notorious Conor McGregor is. But man, seeing him in the interviews, I watched an interview. They had some more press today. It was some big and it was actually the first press they did to an audience. And man, he just looked relaxed. He was speaking really intelligently. The one thing I like, man, Conor has started talking about the weight divisions. A big thing in MMA, if you're not aware, and if you don't care about MMA, you're probably not going to listen to this part anyway. But in MMA, in the UFC, there's actually a big problem with weight classes. If you don't know, in wrestling, in combat sports, boxing, all that, there's a big portion of it is weight cutting. So you have to make weight. There's weight divisions. And something these guys do, and it's a classic thing for wrestling and mixed martial arts and boxing, is a guy might be fighting at 155 pounds, but this guy might walk around at like 200 pounds normally, like a 6-foot guy, 200 pounds, and in his camp, he's got to cut weight down to like 180, and then right before the fight, in the days coming to the fight, they just like spend a lot of time in the sauna, they spend a lot of time on the treadmill, they'll do pad work, and they're wearing full sweats and windbreakers, and they'll wear like a trash bag against their body under their clothes. There's people that wear, like, they'll get these suits and they'll cut weight with these suits that make them sweat. They'll do stuff with a bath, like they'll get in a hot bath, and man, it's really dangerous. Some guys have been close to death. I'm sure there are people that have died from trying to cut weight. It's inevitable, but Khabib in particular, he's had a huge problem trying to make weight in his past, and I think he's solved that problem now because he's seeked out a dietary helper, like a specialist that helps him keep his weight down and then cut from there. So he's a guy that would walk around normally like 205, and he's cutting down to 155. He's the 155-pound champion. So I know he was walking around at 174, which is way better for him than normal. So I think he's going to come into the fight in good shape. But Conor, man, he's in this interview today, he was really spearheading, talking about creating more weight divisions. And I think, so this is UFC 229. We're going to see this Saturday. I'm recording this on October 4th. So if I don't release it before the fight, this is all pre-fight stuff. But Conor was talking about in the press for a good portion of his interview, was talking about, let's create some more weight divisions. Something that's a big problem in the UFC right now is they had a big changeover in ownership. There was this guy, Lorenzo, who was a genius fight maker. Lorenzo Fertitta, I think is his last name, but he is a genius when it comes to making fights, and him and Dana White were kind of co-owners of the UFC, and him and Dana both sold their portions, but Dana remained on in the UFC, and Lorenzo got out. He's out of the business. So Dana's still in there. He's still making fights. He still plays the same role he played before, plus Lorenzo's role, pretty much. And honestly, he's not doing a great job. Something that you're seeing in these cards is they're stripping champions all the time. They're creating, if you don't know what an interim belt is in combat sports, in boxing, MMA, whatever, an interim championship is, let's say, in the lightweight division. I might have said Khabib was a light heavyweight earlier. I meant to say lightweight if I did say that. But in the lightweight division, right, you're 155 pounds. Let's say you have a champion, and for some reason the champion gets injured and he can't compete or something like that. You want title fights to mainline cards, right? Because title fights equal more pay-per-views. Like, if you see a belt on the line, you're exponentially going to get more pay-per-view buys. So with the UFC right now, they've been creating interim belts and having real belts, and there's just belts all over the place. Like, I know one in particular, Tyron Woodley. He's the welterweight champion in the UFC, and he had a shoulder injury, and he was out for like a year plus of time, and he couldn't fight. He had a shoulder injury. So they had an interim title fight between Rafael dos Anjos and Colby Covington. And Colby Covington won. He won the fight, and he took some pretty real nose damage, and he already had damage to his nasal passage, and he was having trouble breathing, which really, really affects your cardio. And because you're supposed to breathe through your nose. If you don't know that, if you breathe through your mouth, you're going to get gassed a lot easier. It's better for your body, like better for your lungs if you're breathing through your nose, if you have that ability. So these guys getting smashed in the nose all the time, it obstructs their nasal passage because it's crushed. And so Colby just needed to get some nasal surgery. And I mean, it was a week after his fight, and Tyron comes off injury all of a sudden right after Colby's fight. And so Dana White, he needs a main event. I think it was 228 or 227 was the Tyron Woodley fight. And he needed a title fight to sell this card. Like, he wasn't going to be able to put a belt on the card. There wasn't going to be one. So what he does is, instead of, waiting for Colby Covington to heal and give him the fight, 5 weeks later or 8 weeks later, whatever it is, to heal up and get a good camp in, because a good camp is typically 7 weeks, something like that, because you don't want to overtrain. You kind of judge it per fighter, but you'll do like 8 weeks, 7 weeks, 6 week camp. Some guys go even shorter. Some guys will take real short notice fights. They'll make fights on 3 weeks notice. I know the last time Khabib fought, when he fought for the 155 pound belt, he fought, he was scheduled to fight Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson destroys his ACL doing press in a freak accident, tripping over cables. And then they pull in Max Holloway, who's the 145-pound champion, to fight him. Max Holloway, who was the 145-pound champion, stepping up to fight the 155-pound champion. He can't make weight. He medically gets pulled from the fight because he can't make weight at 155. And on like 2 days' notice, this fighter, Al Iaquinta, steps in to fight Khabib. So, they're just throwing Hail Marys and audibles all over the UFC game right now. But getting back to the Colby thing, they wanted to make a fight between somebody to fight Tyron Woodley, and Colby couldn't do it. And obviously, it's the interim champion. The interim champion has to fight the real champion to settle the belt, to see who's the real champ, So Colby couldn't fight, obviously. And so what do? They strip Colby of the belt he just won, that they just offered him. Like, he was going to fight Rafael dos Anjos anyway. Rafael dos Anjos is actually how you pronounce it. They do them R's as H's in Brazil. But, yeah, Rafael dos Anjos, Colby goes in there, mauls him. Everybody thinks Colby's going to get smashed. He goes in there and kicks ass, and he just needs a little time to heal up. And they don't give him the opportunity to defend his belt. They strip him immediately. And what do? They give the fight for Tyron Woodley to Darren Till. Darren Till, an amazing fighter, but he missed weight in his fight with, I think it was, who did he fight? Luke Rockhill. I can't remember who Darren Till fought right before he fought before he fought Tyron. But he missed weight. I think he won the fight, but he missed weight. And he immediately gets a title shot right after, and Tyron stomped his ass. He knocked him out in the second round. But it's just weird how Dana White is not great with the perception. Like, it doesn't look good to the public right now, what they're doing with the belts. And getting back to the Conor thing, it only really what he was talking about, it only makes sense if they want title fights all the time. They want titles to be able to sell cards. Make more weight divisions, because the weight cuts are so dangerous. It's so unhealthy for your athletes. And more titles is more titles. That's more opportunity to sell something. So right now, the divisions in the UFC, they have a 125, 135, 145, 155. Then from 155, it goes up to 170. No, yeah. It goes from 155 to 170, from 170 to 185, 185 to 205, and 205 to heavyweight max is 265. So you can any weight under 265 and above 205 is heavyweight. Like, you typically don't want to go in there under 245 if you're going to be a heavyweight. But I mean, if you just think about, like, if you get in the middle of those divisions, you look at 155 to 170, that's 15 pounds. 170 to 185, that's 15 pounds. 185 to 205, that's another 20 pounds. Like, Jesus Christ, there's a huge separation in athleticism. So if you, in the height difference between guys at 155 to 205 is really not that different. Like, you might get some guys fighting at 205 that are like 6'4", but a lot of those guys are going to be heavyweights. I mean, you'll have a guy at 155 that's 5'9", or you can have a guy that's 6'1". And I mean, that's every one of those weight divisions pretty much from 155 to 205. And if you just think about the body types and the musculature, the strength of those fighters, like, if you can cut from, 200 pounds down to 155, you're a massive human being. And the other thing that you don't know is, if you don't know about combat sports, you weigh in for the fight the day before. So you actually have an entire day to drink a shit ton of water and rehydrate and eat food, and you can put on like 15 pounds. So like, if you're fighting at 155 and you weigh in at 155, you can really walk into the cage at like 175 and fight whoever you're fighting at a much larger weight. So if you're a big guy and you can cut the weight and come down to make the weight, you actually have a huge advantage, and all kinds of guys are doing that. So if you think like, if you're thinking about maybe what you weigh, like, I know I weigh, like, I'm walking around right now about 170. Between 170 and 175 is like my natural weight, right? So if I fought some of those dudes that were at 170, like, those dudes are giant. Those dudes are huge. I could never have any hopes of competing with people in that division, like, if that was going to be my natural weight class. And there's no incentive for these guys to fight in their natural weight classes, because they'll get stomped by some dude that's bigger than them, and that's how the game is run. So what's really cool for me is that Conor is the most affecting person, the most affecting singularity in the UFC, in MMA, for sure. And if he's talking about more weight divisions, like a 155, 165, 175, 185, 195, 205, like a belt for every 10 pounds. Boxing has a belt for like every 3.5 pounds. They have like cruiserweight, junior cruiserweight, super cruiserweight. Like, they have so many weight divisions in boxing. So if Conor's talking about it, I bet it happens, There's rumor that the main event, they have yet to announce the main event for UFC 230 at Madison Square Garden, but it is rumored that Nate Diaz and Dustin Poirier are going to fight for the first 165-pound belt, which will be a great fight. Nate Diaz, obviously a championship caliber fighter. Dustin Poirier, he's really poised to be the 155 contender. But the weight division at 155 is it's such a traffic jam at 155 right now. I mean, not only do you have the legit 155ers, but you also pretty much have everybody at the top of the heap in 145 that is probably going to have to move up as they get a little older, just because the weight cuts are so harsh. But you have Conor, Khabib, you have Tony Ferguson, you got Dustin Poirier, you got Nate Diaz that can make that weight. You've got just so many fighters. You got Brian Ortega, who is the number one contender for the 145-pound belt. You got Max Holloway, who is the title holder at 145. You just have so many guys just stacked up. You got Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee, a phenomenal wrestler, getting better at striking all the time. He's only 25 years old. Kevin Lee is going to be a world champion. You just have such a traffic jam at 155. that it only really makes sense to add that 165, add that 175 instead of, move welterweight up to 175 instead of 170 so they can fight a little heavier. It's easier for them to make weight. And then you leave your middleweight at 185. You create a new weight division at 195, and you keep your light heavyweight at 205. So it really only makes sense. The only thing that it will fuck with is the culture shock for the basic UFC fan, because and you might have your opinions about mixed martial arts, but it really is it's a beautiful sport. It's these two human beings. They train their ass off stylistically. They prepare in their gym. They have a team, and they go in there and they just pretty much empty out their toolkit to see who's the better man. When you get two guys that are at a really high level, it is a really interesting thing to watch, because they spend time gauging each other's distance and sizing each other up, seeing what the other person's going to do. So both guys are kind of like magicians that aren't showing you their cards straight up, So they're both trying to pull these tricks out of the bag that neither one knows is coming yet, and then a different fighter will prepare better than the other one. So it's just I love watching fights. I love UFC. I love MMA in general. It's a beautiful thing to watch. But the normal UFC fan, a lot of people just like to see two dudes beating the shit out of each other, and a lot of people, that's the perception of the sport. For many people, it's just that it's like a stupid, non-artistic. Like, I remember Meryl Streep said that they don't want the only arts to be mixed martial arts, or mixed martial arts aren't arts or whatever. But martial arts. A martial art is an art, when you talk about karate, nobody really does karate in the UFC, but you got Muay Thai, a beautiful striking sport, incredibly technical, kickboxing, boxing, you got jiu-jitsu, which is an incredible, if you watch, man, there was the Max Holloway-Brian Ortega fight, which was set for one of the earlier UFC fights this year that fell through, because Max tried to cut that weight and fight Khabib, and got pulled medically. And then when he went through his camp, he got a concussion, and he didn't take inventory of it. And he actually got called out on television by former fighter Michael Bisping, former middleweight champion. He was telling him, he's like, he's got a British accent. I won't do it justice, but I won't try. But he was telling him, he's like, you seem like you just rolled out of bed. You seem tired. Are you okay? Because he's kind of slurring his speech. And he knew Max, and Max was kind of acting strange. And after that, they did a little investigation. They found out he had concussion symptoms because he was trying to go through and do his weight cut, and his body just started fucking him over again. So, for him in particular, I don't know how much he can do that 145 thing, like how much longer. But Brian Ortega, in that, they do a UFC countdown for all their main events. It's like a video thing they'll put out. It's like an episode they'll do on TV. And there's a section of that UFC countdown for Max Holloway and Brian Ortega where T-City, Brian Ortega, is rolling. That's what they call it in jiu-jitsu, rolling. He's rolling with Rener Gracie. The Gracies are the pioneers of jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu in the world. And they're all over the place, Gracie academies. But Rener is one of the best. And there's just this slow-motion video of just Brian and Rener rolling, going through pins and going through positions in jiu-jitsu. And it's like watching two dudes breakdancing with each other. I mean, it's incredible to watch, like the movement and just the obviously all the time spent thinking about just the spacing and the moves. It's kind of incredible to watch. So I would recommend, if you've never seen anybody do jiu-jitsu, there's that UFC countdown, Max Holloway, Brian Ortega. Look that up and watch it. It's really cool. But man, I'm losing my train of thought a little bit. Martial arts. It's it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, let me tell you. R.I.P. Mac Miller. That's really random. That's in this Tiny Desk concert, there's a Portuguese talking. Whatever. Scratch that. But yeah, man, mixed martial arts, I love watching it. If you shortchange it and think it's just two dudes going in there and beating each other like thugs or something, I mean, it's really a lot more than that. They're smart people most of the time. And they go in there to work their ass off. It's a hard career. It's a hard way to go. And I respect, I'm trying to do yoga and I'm trying to run. Anybody that puts themselves through the fire like that, and it's not easy to be. I'm watching people that are trying to be world champions. I mean, I watch all kinds of fights, but the best is the best. And watching the best is so fun, one of the best right now is TJ Dillashaw. TJ Dillashaw, he is the 135-pound champion right now, and his next fight is against Dominic Cruz for the 135-pound belt. He's going to defend, and I think his next fight after that, he's going to step down to 125 and fight the 125-pound champ Henry Cejudo, who is an Olympic gold medalist. I think it's in boxing he's an Olympic gold medalist. No, I don't think it's wrestling. But he's an Olympic gold medalist in boxing, and he just beat DJ Demetrius Johnson, Mighty Mouse, who is the most prolific UFC champion in history. I think he has 11 title defenses on his record. So he won the title in the first fight, and then he defended it 11 times after. So he won 12 title fights consecutively. And I think that was over a period greater than 6 years. So Henry Cejudo just came in, and man, he fought a tough contest in a 5-round decision, and he beat the guy that people think is the best. I mean, there's not a whole lot of stiff competition at 125, which you could imagine, but man, DJ just was stomping everybody, and nobody thought he would ever lose, for sure. Like, if you were going to bet on a fight, that was one to bet on for sure. Henry Cejudo, and win some money, because nobody thought he was going to win. And man, he just came out and he had a great game plan, and he worked his ass off, and he won the fight, and he won the belt. So, you know, if TJ steps through Dominic Cruz, which he may, Dominic Cruz is coming off a huge layoff of injury. Like, it might be a 2-year layoff in injury that he's had, and before that he was out for like 2 years. So man, he's been on the shelf for a while. Dominic Cruz is one of the best ever. His movement in the cage is something Dominic Cruz's movement is so crazy. Like, you could just black out a silhouette of somebody that moves like him when he's fighting, and you would know for sure it's Dominic Cruz, because his style is so unique. It's really hard to deal with. But man, TJ is such a good fighter, and he's also, Conor rises to the occasion and he does really well, but TJ might be the ultimate like rise to the occasion guy in MMA right now, and maybe for a long time, maybe in history, because he thrives in contest. I mean, he's the best version of himself when the lights are on and he's the main event, he's fighting for the title. I mean, he loves it. You can tell by watching him. You can tell by the look on his face. He's an incredible champion. He's a real champ. You know, when I think about greatness, think whatever you want about this, but when I think about greatness and stuff, I think about TJ Dillashaw all the time, because, the dude busts his ass, works harder than anybody can work, and then he thrives off the moment. A lot of people, myself included, you know, they have a lot of grandeur, these, I wouldn't say delusions of grandeur, but they have all these thoughts of like, I'm going to be great, I'm going to do this, whatever. And then when you get there, maybe you weren't prepared enough. You were caught off guard by the moment. You weren't ready to be there, really. And really what it takes for the normal person is a series of moments to learn what it's like to be there in the moment, and then you get comfortable there, and then you can thrive there. But TJ seems like he's always been the guy that he thrives in the moment, and he loves the contest. And if you're not a competitive person, like if you never competed in any kind of sport, like, I know comparing martial arts to this, but I did a whole lot of like marching band stuff, like a lot of marching arts in my life, if you want to call them the mixed marching arts. But I did a lot of that, and what you learn through doing any activity like that is you start to put into perspective how many contests you really get. Like, say it's basketball, boxing, MMA, marching band. Like, in marching band in particular, you only perform your show at contest like 6 times, you know? But you work every day for 3.5 hours or more. In the summer, you're doing 12-hour days for 3 weeks, and you only get to perform your show for judges like 6 to 8 times if you're lucky. You know, so if you think about MMA, your whole career, all your fights, like if you're lucky and you're a great fighter, like maybe you'll end your career with 25 fights, you know, which is, it's a great amount of contests. And in basketball, you know, if you're in the NBA, you play a ton of games. In baseball, you play a ton of games. But in the MMA world, you don't get a lot of runs at it, you know? You really got to, and if you want to get a lot of runs at it, you got to win. you know, because if you're not winning, you're getting beat up and you're getting concussed and your health is declining. So if you want to get a lot of fights, you got to do well. You have to be able to have a little self-preservation and keep yourself going. So knowing that, like, you only get a certain amount of times to be in the moment, and you spend so much time and effort trying to get there and the anticipation building up to it, that for a person to really go off and shine and be their best, and to think about that, like, it's probably the easiest to be your best in practice because you're comfortable there, you have your trainers there, you're in your gym, like, you can be your best in practice. But when TJ Dillashaw steps in the cage, he is the best version of himself that he can be. And every fight, he's better than the last, which means every fight from here on out in the future. Let's not talk about the future, but in the past, if you timeline his fights from the beginning of his pro fight career, every fight has been better than the last, and he's been the best version of himself in every fight going up that ladder, and which is an incredible feat, you know? So you got to give it up to that guy. Shouts out to TJ Dillashaw. Love, I don't know him or anything, but I am a huge admirer of what he does in the cage, what he does with his career. He's a badass, man, that's for sure. Some more MMA stuff, man. Jon Jones. If any of you guys know who Jon Bones Jones is, Jon Jones, probably the greatest fighter in UFC history. We talked a lot about Conor the greatest figure or something, but you want to talk about fighters, like dudes that kick ass, Jon Jones is the man. Jon Jones, there's not a lot of undefeated champions, you know, and Jon Jones isn't undefeated because he is undefeated, but he's not undefeated. And I remember when I was in high school, the first fight I think I saw Jon Jones fight was against a guy named Matt the Hammer Hamill. And Matt Hamill is a deaf gentleman. I think that's the nicest way to say it. He's deaf and he's an MMA fighter, a crazy good wrestler. He's a good striker. But Jon Jones stomped his ass out, and it appeared that he stopped him with elbows, right? And he busted him up, dude. I mean, he knocked him out pretty much, and he was bleeding out of his head, and like the blood was pooling up in his eyes as he laid on the canvas. I mean, it was scary to see, right? And they stopped the fight, and then they come out, the ref comes out, Bruce Buffer comes out, and they announce that it is a victory for Matt Hamill by disqualification for 12-6 elbows. If you're not familiar with 12-6 elbows, in MMA, elbows are legal, but you cannot come from straight up above your head to straight down on a person's face when they're on the ground. That's called a 12-6 elbow. And it's just like, I don't think it's a legitimate move, and it shouldn't be illegal. And there's a lot of debate on whether it should be illegal, should not be illegal. And also, they weren't exactly 12-6 elbows. Also, he was beating the fucking shit out of the guy. The reason he won was not because of the 12-6 elbows. So he got disqualified. That's his only official loss on record. Now, he does have 2 no contests to Daniel Cormier. Daniel Cormier, who is right now the light heavyweight title holder as well as the heavyweight title holder, is the second ever 2 UFC weight class champion. He's holding 2 belts consecutively right now. The interesting thing is Jon Jones has beat him twice, and both times Jon Jones tested hot for banned substances. The first time they were able to source it out to, it's really funny, there's an interview on Joe Rogan. Jon Jones was talking about, a friend of his offered him an off-brand Cialis, and it was tainted with a supplement that is banned by USADA. USADA is the organization that drug tests for the UFC. So what these fighters are required to do is insane. They have to have samples of every supplement they take. They have to make sure that nobody's putting stuff in their water, nobody's putting stuff in their food to make them test hot so that they can't fight, or so that, you know, it'll be wiped from the record if the other guy loses. Like, who knows the conspiracy stuff, like if people are spiking stuff to get people to test hot. But unfortunately, Jon Jones took some bad dick pills, and he tested hot for a controlled substance, a banned substance in the UFC. And so the first fight where he beats Daniel Cormier by decision, I believe, is scrapped from the record. No contest for both of them. So it's not a loss for Daniel. It's not a loss for Jon. It's just a no contest. And then the second fight Jon Jones knocked him out with a head kick. He told him in press, he was like, I'm going to catch you with a head kick and knock you out. Knock you the fuck out, dude. And he did. And he caught him and he knocked him out, and then he chased him down and TKO'd him, beat the shit out of him, and he won his title. So what the chronological thing, how it happens, Jon beats DC. He gets stripped of his belt for testing hot, and then when he gets cleared and they realized it wasn't that he was taking steroids, they set a new fight, and they fight for the vacant belt. And no, I don't think they fight for a vacant belt. Somehow DC, I think Daniel Cormier fought Alexander Gustafsson for the vacated belt. He wins against Gustafsson in a decision, and he's the new title holder. Jon Jones comes off the bench, and he goes in, fights DC, beats him, knocks him out, and then again, he tests hot for the drug test right before the fight. So if you're not aware, USADA will test these athletes all the time. So they test Jon all the time, he tests clean all the time, and then the drug test he took literally before the fight, he failed that one for an incredibly small amount of a banned substance. And then the drug test he took after the fight, he passed that drug test, so he didn't test hot for that one. So again, people think that maybe somebody just put something in his water, somebody did something to try to fuck him over. What USADA determined is that his amount of steroids he took would have given him no effect. There's no reason that he would have taken that amount. It must have been something that they can't trace. But they test, like I was getting into earlier, these athletes have to, you could imagine they might be taking any kind of vitamins, just general vitamins, that like a male vitamin, something that anybody would take. And then they're taking all kinds of stuff, like anything that'll give them an edge, something that might help them sleep better, get a little more rest, something to help them put on a little more muscle mass. Anything that's legal, these guys will do to try to get an edge. I mean, it's just natural. That's what you would do. And so they have to keep everything they take. They have to report everything they take to USADA, every single thing. And then they have to give them samples in the event that something goes wrong. So Jon got totally screwed. Again, he beats DC, gets stripped of his belt, but he doesn't get stripped because DC, he doesn't just get stripped because DC was the champion. So the belt goes back to DC. Another no contest. DC's now the title holder. He steps up to heavyweight after that fights Stipe Miocic, knocks Stipe Miocic out in the first round, becomes the heavyweight champion. And now here's Jon Jones. They figure out that they give him off his 15-month suspension, and they put him back in, and he's not going to get to redeem himself against Daniel Cormier because Cormier is about 40 years old now, and he's, I don't think he can beat Jon Jones. I don't think he thinks he can beat Jon Jones because he hasn't. And so it's kind of shitty for Jon. He's going to get no redemption to beat Cormier and have it on his record that he beat Daniel Cormier. And Cormier also is out here living his best life, doing Jon Jones' dream. So Jon's thing was to be an undefeated title holder. He's the youngest champion in UFC history, Jon Jones. I think he was 26 years old when he won the belt. And Jon wanted to be undefeated at light heavyweight and then step up to heavyweight, win the belt there, be a 2 title holder, be undefeated for his career. So, I mean, technically he's undefeated, but he does have 1 loss by DQ and 2 no contests. But Jon Jones is cleared. After 15 months of a suspension, Jon Jones is coming back to the UFC. They have yet to announce a title fight for him. He's originally from New York, so it makes sense to put him on the MSG card, Madison Square Garden at 2:30. UFC 230, but I don't think they're going to do it. I think they actually came out in the press and they said they're not going to. Going back to Dustin Poirier and Nate Diaz, they're not announced as the main. They're kind of promoting them as the main event for the card right now, but they're holding out. Like on the website, they're showing that they're going to have a different person, a different fight for the main event, which is a mystery right now. So we'll see after Conor and Khabib who they announce for 230, but nonetheless, Jon Jones is coming back. And who's he going to fight? Who's up on Jon Jones' radar? Because light heavyweight, I mean, there's it's not a traffic jam. It's the opposite of a traffic jam. It's just kind of like a road closure. Because Cormier has stepped up to heavyweight, and he's won the belt, and his next fight is against Brock Lesnar. It's already confirmed. He's going to fight Brock Lesnar for the heavyweight title. Which he already has. Brock Lesnar is going to challenge him. And then he said publicly, after that, he's going to retire. He's going to ride off into the sunset with his 2 belts, drop the 2 belts, and have an amazing career. Daniel Cormier is undefeated at heavyweight. He fought at heavyweight for a long time. That's actually when he entered mixed martial arts. I think he fought in the Pride tournament. Pride used to have these tournaments. That was another organization like the UFC. And he stepped into that last notice as a replacement and then just ran through the whole deal and then won the Pride heavyweight title. And he's been undefeated at heavyweight his entire career. He stepped down to light heavyweight to get that title and to try to fight Jon. And then we see how that worked out for him. Also, I don't know if you can tell, I don't like Daniel Cormier very much. He tries to be a trash talker, but he just sounds like a little bitch. That's what I think. I don't like what he says about Jon Jones is the fucking man. Jon Jones is probably the best ever. And Daniel tries to act like he's better than that. But boy, you got decisioned once, and then you got beat by a decision, and you got knocked the fuck out, and you're still talking trash like you're better than somebody. But you're not. So that's my opinion on Daniel Cormier. I would like to see Jon Jones get that fight again, come out, beat him a 3rd time. Daniel Cormier, I'm sure he's the nicest guy in the world. I actually don't have any animosity. I don't know him at all. But I would love to see Jon Jones come back and fight Cormier, but it's not going to happen. If Cormier somehow loses to Brock Lesnar, I mean, Brock's getting up there in age too, dude. He's not very young. There's no way he's going to beat Daniel Cormier. I really don't think it'll happen. But it would be crazy to see Jon Jones fight Brock Lesnar. But nonetheless, dude, I mean, what are the fight possibilities for Jon Jones? Light heavyweight is he's not going to not fight for a title. He's not going to come in and not fight for a belt. What the UFC wants right now is they know Cormier is not going to defend, so they want him to drop the belt. They want him to strip himself of the light heavyweight title. And then Jon will fight probably Alexander Gustafsson, who, man, Jon Jones and Alexander Gustafsson went through a 5-round war. If you've never seen that fight, look it up online and watch it. It is an unbelievable fight. Gustafsson is a baller. He fought Daniel Cormier to a decision as well for the title. He fought Jon to decision for the title. He lost both those contests, but dude, it is some of the most admirable fighting I've ever seen from a fighter, dude. Alexander Gustafsson is a G, for real. He's this Scandinavian bow hunter and shit. The dude's out there hunting deer in the Scandinavian cold forest and shit. The dude's a boss. So I'd love to see Jon Jones Gustafsson 2. Would be a great fight. Another one in the rumor mill coming up is Jon Jones versus Cain Velasquez. Or Velasquez. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce the Spanish name. But Cain Velasquez, he is maybe the best UFC heavyweight in history. So Jon Jones would have to step up to heavyweight to fight him. And that would not be for a belt, but it would be a huge fight. So seeing Cain come... What's interesting about that is Cain is Daniel Cormier's, training partner. They're homies. I think they train out of Alpha Male. I may be wrong about that. But they go to war with each other in wrestling. They're both great wrestlers. They're both great strikers, Daniel Cormier and Cain Velasquez. And, man, they're bros. They're bros to the point where Cormier dropped down to... I'm just remembering that now. Cormier dropped down to light heavyweight to avoid having to fight Cain because they're friends and they didn't want to fight, and they train together. They train each other. They go hard in sparring. It's a huge part of their camp is being able to rely on each other. And if they're going to fight each other, they can't train against each other because, they'll know everything the other one's going to do. So to get out of Cain's way and let Cain go for a title picture, Daniel dropped down a weight division and went for the title at light heavyweight. And Cain was the heavyweight champion. He might be the greatest heavyweight in UFC history. On paper, it's Stipe Miocic is the greatest heavyweight because he's got 3 title defenses on top of winning the title. So 4 successful title fights in a row, which is the most in UFC heavyweight history. But man, Jon Jones versus Cain Velasquez, that would be a barn burner of a fight. Other than that, I really don't see what he can do. Jon Jones versus Cain, Jon Jones versus Brock, Jon Jones versus Gustafsson. That's really all he can do right now. Any of those would be amazing fights. I love to see those. So that's my little spiel on UFC. That went long, man. I could talk about fights. I'll probably try to limit the fight talking because I know a lot of people probably ain't into it. But whatever, this is my podcast. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Shit, y'all. What else can we talk about? Man, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it for this time. We did what we did, a little bit over an hour here. Maybe we'll just leave it at that, huh? So, man, please keep listening. Tell your friends, like and subscribe. I'm on YouTube at Live from the Tracking Room. I'm on Instagram at LFTTR_. Tell your friends, tell your mother, let her know to listen to the podcast. There's a young man on here talking about fighting that she really needs to hear his voice. No. Don't tell your mom that. Just give her my number or something. But, nah, man, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. And please keep coming back, like, subscribe. I'm going to be releasing on the podcast app for Apple here very, very soon. And then I'm going to build a little finance. We're going to build a little LFTTR fund to get the proper recording equipment. Then we're going to get some video and lighting equipment. And then I'm going to buy, hopefully, a badass computer so I can live stream all this shit to YouTube. And we'll get some guests in here. So if you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, if you're a comedian, if you're a musician, you want to hang out, reach out to me, let me know. I'm always looking for that. And thank you again for listening to another edition of Live from the Tracking Room. And I'm out.